The gates of Cable Ridge hummed as they scanned her clearance code, even though no one had asked for it. The metal slid open with clinical efficiency, unlike the people inside. Amira stepped through, her boots leaving faint marks on the gravel path. She wore the standard navy blue jacket issued to orbital contractors, simple, sun-worn, marked only by a small silver patch, UNSC atmospheric defense. It could have meant anything, and to most here it meant nothing. From across the lawn, a cluster of guests gathered beneath a canopy of imported sycamores, sipping lavender cocktails and discussing market yields like scripture. A drone floated overhead, filming every curated angle of the succession ceremony, the day her cousin Wren was to inherit the family's energy estate. No one turned when she entered. No one expected her to come. Not until Rupert Cavell, her father's younger brother and now the patriarch in practice, spotted her. His eyes flicked over the jacket, the boots, the utility holster at her hip, and then he laughed just loud enough for the guests to hear. "Don't worry about her," he said with a dismissive wave of his champagne flute. "That's Amira, works with satellites or hell, I don't know, some kind of environmental groundskeeping." The woman next to him tittered politely. "Oh, government landscaping." "Close enough," Rupert smirked. "Official lawnmower for the sky." The laughter was light, airy, meant to be harmless. Amira didn't react. She didn't flinch. She didn't remind them she'd been invited by the Department of Global Energy itself, on account of her being one of the top-tier strategists in orbital energy defense. She just adjusted the cuff of her jacket and kept walking. She made her way past rows of hydrangeas genetically engineered to bloom in harmony with the family crest. Everything here was designed, intentional, polished. Unlike her. Every few feet, a guest glanced her way, then looked past her, the way you might glance at a technician resetting a breaker mid-event. Some smiled faintly out of habit. Others frowned, trying to place her. No one asked. Amira moved with purpose, not toward the ballroom but toward the far side of the estate, where the auxiliary solar regulators were housed. The family called it the shed. She called it the only thing here that still worked on facts instead of flattery. Her fingers skimmed across the sensor screen, recalibrating the heat sink. Her eyes scanned the data feed from a micro-drone looping the northern field. Everything looked stable until the numbers began to shift. She paused, tilted her head. There was a sudden drop in radiation absorption, strange for a cloudless day. Then came the faint chime in her earpiece, encrypted, Tier 1 clearance. UNSC link active, channel secure, Cable Ridge anomalies detected. Possible targeting protocol breached. Immediate advisory required. Her eyes didn't widen, her breath didn't hitch. She simply straightened her back, looked toward the ballroom. Behind those thick glass walls, the family's chosen heir was being toasted like a savior. Wren Cavell, poised and photogenic, was shaking hands beneath chandeliers that ran on grid power her system had stabilized last quarter during a cyber assault from a rogue state. But they didn't know that. They didn't want to. To them, Amira had vanished after high school, the quiet cousin who tinkered with wires and never understood business. She hadn't been invited to birthdays, hadn't been asked about her work, and when the farm's energy systems mysteriously stopped failing 4 years ago, they chalked it up to upgrades. She could have explained. She didn't, because sometimes silence isn't surrender. Sometimes it's a containment strategy. It began with a flicker, not in the chandeliers or the sound system. Those were backed by triple redundancies. It was in the sky. A shift in the geosynchronous relay, detectable only by the orbital net Amira had spent the last 6 years coding, recoding and shielding from international sabotage. She tapped her wrist unit. The interface bloomed across her lens. UNSC alert solar concentration spike sector ID. CR14, a Cable Ridge advisory. Potential overcharge satellite sweep initiated Level 3 response authorization required her fingers moved fast. She rerouted diagnostics, initiated deflection algorithms. The spike wasn't random. Someone had piggybacked the ridge's solar grid to test unauthorized energy siphoning. It wasn't just risky. It was an act of eco-terrorism, and it was happening now, during the succession ceremony. She activated remote override. Protocol dictated one thing: transparency. By UNSC regulation, in the event of a public energy breach, all regional displays capable of broadcast were required to mirror the emergency feed. That included the ballroom's 72-inch projection wall, currently showing a montage of baby Wren on a pony. The screen glitched, once, then again. Then it cut to black. Guests looked up, mildly confused. Someone tapped a waiter. Rupert muttered, "Tech stuff always glitching." Then the screen came back. White letters on navy background. UNSC Global Energy Response Live Feed Sector CR14A Incident Detected Mission Active. Gasps spread like static. Someone dropped a glass, and there she was, Amira, on the screen. Standing in a high-altitude wind tunnel, jacket flapping, headset on, relaying coordinates to a team of orbital tacticians. Grid point 4A is overloaded. Reroute access to Vega Array. Lock South Node. Initiate deflection sweep before 1942. The voice wasn't soft. It wasn't uncertain. It was commanding, professional, unmistakable. Then came the satellite footage, a thermal map of the ridge, the overcharge spike. The stabilization wave rolling out from a relay Amira had built with a team of 6, while her family sent out Christmas cards with her name missing. Back in the ballroom, no one spoke. Even the waitstaff stopped. Then the overlay appeared. Lead strategist Global Energy Stabilization Network Amira Cavell, the name hung there, centered, bold, backlit by global insignias. Aunt Mallory, mouth half open, whispered, "Is that?" live. And from the back of the room, someone answered what everyone else was just beginning to realize. She's not just working with satellites. She's running them. The screen didn't cut away. It didn't fade to black. It expanded, split into 3 feeds, one from the stratospheric relay above Idaho, one from the Mission Control Center in Geneva, and one, a live thermal overlay of Cavell Ridge itself, glowing bright red at its weakest points. The name stayed fixed in the bottom corner. Amira Cavell, lead strategist, UNSC Global Defense Grid. Her voice continued, measured, concise, issuing commands to stabilize the overcharge before the ridge hit failure threshold. Confirm cloud array deflection. Pull feed from substation C7. Anchor the shield, no loss of sync. Inside the ballroom, silence became something else, not just quiet, but reverent. Phones began to appear, first one, then 5, then 20. The cameras turned away from Wren, away from the floral arch, away from the champagne tower, and pointed back toward the woman they'd ignored at the gate. Is that really her? She's wearing the same jacket. Wait, her name's right there. Amira stood beneath the edge of the canopy, watching them finally watch her. Not her face, not her dress, but her work, and they couldn't look away. Rupert's smile had faltered. His champagne flute lowered an inch, then another. By the time the footage rolled into a split-screen simulation of what would have happened if Amira hadn't intervened, his hand was trembling. 12% grid destabilization across 5 counties. Critical blackout in Ridge Sector. Power loss to 800,000 homes. Catastrophe averted by tactical energy rerouting, coordinated by Cavell. A young intern in a Navy UNSC polo appeared on screen, live from Mission Control. Today's incident highlights the effectiveness of Amira Cavell's predictive shielding protocol. Her designs have saved millions in infrastructure and response costs since 2045. We owe this prevention once again to her foresight. There was no way to spin it now. No more tech stuff or volunteer work. No more the cousin who disappeared. Because this time her name was said out loud, by governments, by anchors, by the screen they'd rented themselves. Even Ren had stopped pretending. He was staring, jaw tight, shoulders curled inward, like he finally understood he'd been handed the family crown in a room whose true architect was standing outside, stabilizing the walls. Amira didn't step forward. She didn't interrupt. She didn't ask for the microphone. The screen was doing that for her, and for the first time the Cavels were listening. The screen looped again, Amira's name, the satellite map, the Unsk crest, before fading slowly into a calm blue standby. No one moved, not even Rupert. Amira didn't wait for applause. She didn't need silence to be granted. She carried it like armor. She stepped forward, through the open doors, into the ballroom that had once whispered she was strange, quiet, not leadership material. Into the very space where her name had been a footnote or a family embarrassment. Now it was headlining. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "I came here today," she began, her tone clear, even, "because I was told the Cavel legacy would be passed on, and I wanted to see what version of that word was being celebrated." She looked at no one in particular, but everyone felt seen. "Legacy," she said, pausing. "It's not just land or yield or photo ops." Her gaze met Rupert's for a beat. He froze. It's responsibility, vision, the ability to predict collapse before it arrives and act before it's too late. Aunt Mallory blinked rapidly as if trying to rewrite the last 5 minutes in her head. Ren stood behind her, still holding a glass of untouched wine. "When I left at 18, Amira continued, people whispered that I ran from the family name. But I didn't run. I built something, quietly, precisely. While you were perfecting speeches, I was building shields. And while you were handing out heirlooms, I was protecting everything under them." No one dared interrupt. Not even the tech intern trying to discreetly pause the broadcast feed. He stopped with his hand halfway to the tablet. "You called me a dropout, a technician, what was it?" She turned to Rupert. "Groundskeeper for the sky." His mouth opened, closed, then stayed shut. "You never asked where I'd been, what I was doing. You didn't need to, because you'd already written a version of me that made you comfortable." Her voice didn't waver, not once. But comfort is not legacy. Legacy is what survives under pressure. She took a breath, not because she was nervous, but because she wanted this next sentence to land like truth hitting concrete. "And I've spent the last decade ensuring that when your legacy flickers, my systems keep the lights on." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was sacred. Because for the first time, they weren't hearing the girl who never quite fit. They were hearing the woman who had already outbuilt them all. She didn't wait for a response. Amira paused only long enough for the words to settle like ash after impact. Then she stepped back, heels tapping soft and certain against marble. Rupert still hadn't spoken. His champagne flute, now barely held, tilted in his hand. A slow tremble, then tink, the sound of crystal meeting stone. The glass shattered on the ballroom floor. No one gasped this time. They were still frozen, trapped in the silence she had just owned. A woman near the back whispered, "She was right here the whole time." Someone else murmured, "She's trending #1. But Amira didn't smile, not for validation, not for vengeance. She turned toward the exit. As she passed Ren, their eyes met. And for the first time, he didn't look superior. He looked small, but not bitter, maybe even grateful. He gave her a slow nod, not of pity, but of respect. She returned it, one beat, then kept walking. At the threshold, she felt it. That invisible weight, the one she'd carried for 16 years, shaped like a last name that had never fully held her. She set it down. Her hand touched the glass door. The wind outside rippled her jacket as if welcoming her back to the world where she belonged, not this ballroom, not this bloodline, but the sky. Behind her, a voice called out, "Amira, wait." She didn't turn, but she paused. It was Rupert. His voice wasn't commanding now. It wasn't smug. It was unfamiliar. Smaller. I'm sorry. Just that, not a speech, not an excuse, just the first honest sentence he'd ever said to her. She waited a moment. Then, without looking back, she replied, I know. And she stepped into the sunlight. The air outside was clean, brisk. The kind of air you notice when you're no longer holding your breath for anyone's approval. Her wrist device pinged. A direct message from the Geneva HQ. UNSC confirmation appointment. Global Director. Energy Response Command meeting with Security Council. Monday 0800 CET. Then came another message. From a contact labeled only Skyward. They finally saw you. Took them long enough. She smiled, not at them, at herself. She tapped a quick reply. Got what I needed. I'm ready. And with that, she walked toward the edge of the driveway where a government transport drone waited, its panels blinking like stars in daylight. The doors slid open. She stepped inside. No fanfare, no headlines, just trajectory. As the drone lifted, the estate grew smaller below her, the place that once tried to erase her now looking irrelevant. And for the first time in years, Amira Cavell left without being forgotten. She didn't need a legacy. She'd already built one in orbit.